You've saved 30 grand. You want property income. Everyone's telling you to get on the ladder, buy your first buy to let, lock it in and wait. But when you actually run the numbers, the deposit alone eats most of your capital, and you're left with maybe 200 quid a month if you're lucky. Meanwhile, your mate down the pub's controlling 5 properties, pulling 2.5 grand a month, and he started with the same cash you've got sat in your account right now. So what's the difference? He chose control over ownership, and that's the fork in the road we're walking through today. By the end of this, you'll see the exact capital requirement, monthly profit and timeline for both routes using the same real property. Then you'll know which move actually fits where you are right now, not where some mortgage broker wishes you were. And if you're serious about building a deal business in UK property rather than just dreaming about it, hit like and subscribe, because that's exactly what this channel's built for. Let's start with what £30,000 actually buys you in a straight buy-to-let, because the gap between what you think you can afford and what the market demands is bigger than most operators realise until they are halfway through a mortgage application. Take a standard 3-bedroom terrace in a Midland city, valued at £150,000, with a market rent of £1,200 a month. Sounds achievable. But here's the line-by-line reality. A 25% deposit on that property is £37,500, and you are already over budget before you have paid a single fee. Stamp duty, assuming you have already used any first-time relief, adds another £4,500. Refurb to get it rentable, even if it is just decoration and safety certificates, call it £3,000. Legal fees, mortgage arrangement, survey, another £1,500 minimum. Total outlay to get that property cash flowing, £46,500. You are £16,000 short, and that is before you have held back any reserve for voids or maintenance. Now let's say you somehow stretch to it. Maybe you borrow from family, or you've actually got 50 grand saved. What does that property pay you? Mortgage at 75% loan to value, current rates around 5.5%, cost you about £650 a month. Insurance another 30. Management at 10 to 12% of rent, that's 120 to 144. Maintenance reserve another 50 to be safe. Your net monthly profit after all that? 180 to 220 quid. Cash on cash return, about 5 to 6% annually on the capital you deployed. And the timeline? 3 months minimum from offer accepted to first rent coming in, because you're waiting on surveys, solicitors, mortgage completions, the whole chain. What you gain is real. Equity build, potential capital appreciation, a leveraged asset that could be worth a lot more in 10 years. What it costs is also real. All your capital locked into one property, low immediate cash flow, and scaling means finding another 46 grand for property number 2. If you've got 100 grand liquid and stable income to cover the mortgage during voids, this starts to make sense as a long-term wealth play. But if you've got 30 and you need cash flow now, this model doesn't get you there. So let's control the same property instead of buying it, and watch what happens to the capital requirement and the monthly return. Same £150,000 terrace, same £1,200 market rent. But you're not purchasing it. You're signing a 3 to 5 year agreement with the landlord, where you become the tenant, you pay them a fixed rent, and you sublet it, either as a house in multiple occupation, HMO, room by room, or as a corporate let. Upfront capital breakdown looks completely different. First month's rent to the landlord, £1,200. Deposit, 5 weeks standard under the Tenant Fees Act, call it £1,400. Light refurb and staging, because you want this place to command top rent, maybe £2,500 to £3,000 if you're furnishing it properly for an HMO or corporate model. Tenant deposits you'll collect are held in a government-backed scheme, so they're not really your money, just facilitated. Total outlay to control this property and get it cash flowing, £6,000, that's it. Now here's the revenue model. Let it as a 3-bed HMO at £450 per room and you're pulling £1,350 gross, or corporate let to a contractor or relocating professional at £1,500 a month. Monthly costs £1,200 to the landlord. Bills, if you're including them, may be £100 to £150, and you're managing the tenants yourself or paying someone a percentage. Net monthly profit £350 to £500, depending on your model and how tight you run it. Cash on cash return 70 to 100% plus in year 1 on the £6,000 you deployed. Timeline 4 weeks from landlord agreement to first tenant paying you rent. Because there's no chain, no mortgage, no surveyor holding things up, you can move fast. What you gain is immediate high cash flow and your capital freed up to repeat this across multiple properties. What you don't get is no equity, no ownership, no mortgage leverage, and the agreement is finite. If the landlord wants to sell or move back in, and you haven't structured a solid exclusivity clause, you're out. But if your goal right now is monthly profit that replaces or supplements your income, this is the fastest route from £30,000 to serious cash flow. Here's where it gets interesting, that £30,000 buys you one buy-to-let if you can stretch the deposit, and it generates maybe £200 a month, or it controls 5 rent-to-rent properties at £6,000 each, and those 5 combined are generating £1,750 to £2,500 a month. Let's look at the 12-month picture. Buy-to-let, £2,400 annual profit. All your capital locked in one asset, equity building slowly in the background. Rent-to-rent times 5. £21,000 to £30,000 annual profit. Capital working across multiple deals, no equity but serious cash flow that you can reinvest, live off, or use to fund buy-to-let deposits down the line. This is the capital multiplication effect that separates operators who scale from operators who wait. Rent-to-rent is a cash flow business, not a property portfolio. You are trading control and speed for ownership and leverage. And the smart move? Use the rent-to-rent profit to build a war chest, then start acquiring buy-to-lets when you have the capital and infrastructure to support them. It's not one or the other forever, it's sequencing based on where you are right now. If you have £15,000 to £30,000 and you need cash flow immediately, rent-to-rent funds everything. If you have £100,000 plus and stable income, buy-to-let starts to make sense for long-term wealth. Most operators in your position should be starting with control, not ownership. But let's talk about the risks. Nobody mentions when they're selling you the dream. Buy-to-let risks are well known but often underestimated. Tenant voids mean you're still paying the mortgage, and one 3-month void wipes out half your annual profit. Interest rate rises hit hard when you're leveraged, and we've all seen what's happened to mortgage costs in the last 2 years. Property values can drop, and if you need to sell in a down market, you're crystallising a loss. Your capital is illiquid for years unless you remortgage or sell, and mortgage lending criteria keep tightening, so what you qualified for last year might not be available next year. Rent-to-rent risks are different and more operational. Your entire deal depends on the landlord relationship. If that sours, or if their circumstances change and they want to sell or move back in, you're out unless your agreement is rock solid with long exclusivity. You're managing multiple tenants if it's an HMO or a corporate client who might leave with a month's notice, and void risk is higher because your margin disappears fast if you've got even one empty room. There's no asset to sell if you need an exit. You're in a commercial agreement, and when it ends, you walk away with no equity. The landlord dependency is real. Your rent-to-rent deal is only as solid as the agreement you've signed and the landlord's ability to honour it. If they default on their mortgage and the property gets repossessed, you're caught in that. This is why finding the right landlord and having a proper, solicitor drafted agreement is non-negotiable. You're asking someone to trust you with a six-figure asset. They want to see you're serious. That means references, proof of funds for the deposit period, and a properly structured agreement that protects both sides. Not a template you downloaded off some forum. A real solicitor who understands commercial rent-to-rent. And if you're letting as an HMO, many councils require licensing. That's additional fees, property standards, compliance checks. It's not optional, and it's part of looking professional and protecting the deal. If you're operating outside the rules, you're exposed, and so is your landlord. Get it right from the start. The time demand is also different. Buy-to-let is more passive once it's tenanted. You've got one tenant, one agreement, and a letting agent handling most of it if you want. Rent-to-rent is active deal management. You're juggling multiple tenants or corporate clients, handling maintenance faster because it's not your asset and the landlord expects it looked after, and you're the first line for any issue. Expect more involvement, especially in the first 6 months while you're dialing it in. If that sounds like hassle, you're not ready for this model. If it sounds like opportunity, you're thinking like an operator. So when do you control and when do you buy? Here's the logic. If you've got under £40,000 liquid and you need cash flow now to replace or supplement income, rent-to-rent is the move. If you've got £100,000 or more and stable income to service mortgages during voids, buy-to-let becomes viable for long-term wealth. If you want to scale fast and test multiple markets or property types, rent-to-rent lets you learn cheaply without committing all your capital to one postcode. If you want leverage and equity and you can afford to wait 5 to 10 years for serious growth, buy-to-let is the play. But here's the hybrid path most operators miss. Use rent-to-rent to generate £2,000 to £3,000 a month profit. Bank that for 12 to 18 months. Then use it as deposits for buy-to-let deals while your rent-to-rents keep cash flowing. You're not choosing one forever. You're sequencing based on capital position and risk appetite. And let's be honest about risk appetite. If the idea of no equity makes you deeply uncomfortable, you're not ready for rent-to-rent. If the idea of all your cash locked in one asset for years makes you uncomfortable, you're not ready for buy-to-let. Most operators with £15,000 to £30,000 should start with rent-to-rent or deal packaging, build cash flow and credibility, then move into ownership when the numbers support it. That's not a compromise, that's strategy. Before you make the call, you need to run your own numbers, not rely on someone else's example. Here's the simple comparison model you should build for any deal you're considering. Column 1. Total upfront capital. That's deposit, fees, refurb and cash reserve. Column 2. Monthly gross income. Column 3. Monthly costs. Mortgage or rent to landlord, bills, management, maintenance. Column 4. Net monthly profit. Column 5. Cash on cash return, which is your annual profit divided by capital deployed. Column 6. Payback period. How many months to recover your initial outlay from profit? Column 7. Scalability. How many deals can you do with your available capital? Run this for your market, your property type, your capital. National averages are useless. Your deal is what matters. And include sensitivity testing. What happens if mortgage rates rise 1%? If you have one void month per year? If refurb costs overrun by 20%? If a rent-to-rent landlord wants out after 2 years instead of 5? The professional operator models pessimistically, executes conservatively, and never deploys capital they can't afford to have locked up or lost. If the numbers still work under stress, the deal is real. If they don't, walk away and find the next one. Capital is currency, and the question isn't whether you can afford to buy. The question is, where does your capital generate the highest return right now? With 30 grand, you're not locked out of property income. You're choosing between slow ownership and fast control. Rent to rent isn't a stepping stone or a compromise. It's a commercial deal business that can outperform buy to let on cash flow and scalability for years if you run it properly. Ownership will come, but cash flow funds everything. And the operator who controls 5 properties while their mates are still saving for one is the one building the deal business that finances the portfolio later. So here's what you do next. Pick one property in your target area. Run both models with real numbers. See which fits your capital, timeline and risk appetite. Then move on the one that pays you fastest. And wherever you land, make sure your agreements are tight and your compliance is sorted. Solicitor who knows property. Licensing if it's an HMO. Proper deposit protection. Redress scheme registration if you're acting as an agent. Looking professional isn't optional when you're asking landlords or lenders to trust you with 6 figures of their asset.